Cinema in minutes. In today's video, we will be going through a 2006 American heist thriller film entitled The Inside Man. There will be spoilers ahead, chill out and enjoy. The movie begins with the narration of a man named Dalton Russell. He is inside an unspecified cell and describes how he has successfully delivered a perfect bank robbery. It is a normal, usual busy day in the bank where people are lined up for their bank transactions. The security guard asks the woman who is on the phone to lower her voice because she is disturbing other customers. A man wearing a mask and dressed up as a painter enters the bank. The security guard didn't check on him because he looks like a maintenance personnel. He shutdowns all the CCTV cameras inside the bank with his device without hassle. When the cameras are already turned off, the other robbers enter the bank, lock the front door and throw tear gas inside the bank. They order the people to get down on the floor and warn them that if anyone is seen standing after 4 seconds, they will get a bullet in the brain. All the people, including the elderly who are having difficulties moving, don't have any choice but to follow the orders of the robbers. Smoke comes out of the bank, so a concerned citizen informs a police officer that roams around the area. The police officer tries to open the door but is surprised when a robber opens it and aims a gun on him. The robber informs the police officer that they have hostages inside and they will start to kill people if police get near the bank's door. The police officer hurriedly reports that there is a hostage situation at the 20 Exchange, Manhattan Trust and asks for backup. Detective Keith Frazier just finished his conversation with his girlfriend on the phone. While he is talking with his colleague Detective Bill Mitchell, their supervisor approaches them and informs them that they will oversee the negotiations of the bank robbery in Manhattan Bank. The two are thirsty for action, so they excitedly go to the location. The police officers hurriedly surround the bank and secure the area. The media arrives as well to cover the situation. Mr. Arthur Case, the owner of the bank, is very surprised and bothered when his secretary informs him about the robbery in progress to one of their branches in Manhattan. Finally, Detectives Keith and Bill arrive at the location and ask the police officer the situation. While inside the bank, the robbers confiscate the keys and the cell phones of the hostage. They divide them into groups and put them in different rooms. One of the hostages named Peter Hammond didn't give his phone and lies that he left it at home, but the robber calls his phone and finds out that he hid it inside the room. The robber grabs him to the room with a frosted window and the other hostages see how he knocks the poor man down. Out of fear, an Arab man voluntarily gives his car keys, and the young boy gives his PSP, but the robber tells the young boy to keep it and warns the hostages that they will knock him down as well if they will not follow his orders. The robber divides the hostages into men and women and asks them to strip down to their underwear, but an old woman refuses, so he calls another robber with a call sign Stevie to get the old woman and bring her to another room. After that, he orders the remaining hostages to put on a black suit and mask. The detectives enter the NYPD truck and talk to the head of the police. It seems like Detective Keith doesn't have a good relationship with the head of the police, but they don't have any choice but to cooperate with each other. The two detectives now ask for a vest and go out of the truck to check what's going on. The robbers divide the hostages into groups, put them in different rooms and order them to drop their faces on the floor. One of the hostages has difficulty breathing because of a heart problem. The robbers release that hostage. The police cuff him and interview him to know what happened inside. The robbers check the rooms but pass the room with money. It seems like they are there for something else. Mr. Case calls Madeline White, a power broker. Madeline is surprised to hear that the founder is the one who personally called, so she assumes that the situation is urgent. Arthur tells Madeline that he will pick her up in the office after 5 minutes and she agrees. A video plays where the detectives interrogate some of the bank's hostages, but they fail to get any information. The head of NYPD informs the detective that the robber let go of one of the hostages who suffers from chest pain. He also adds that the robbers give a warning that they will throw out dead bodies if police come near the door. The hostage also tells them that the robbers are dressed as painters. The head of NYPD also adds that the bank has a video system, and they are trying to retrieve it, but it will take a while. Mr. Case asks for Madeline's help to act as fixer and protect what's inside his safety deposit box within the bank. Madeline convinces Arthur to tell her the content of the box, but he is hesitant and just describes it as a valuable thing that poses no danger to anyone except to him. Madeline agrees to cooperate with Arthur. One of the robbers takes off his mask and digs a hole in one of the rooms in the bank. The detectives find out that the robbers blind the CCTV cameras using the infrared light from a flashlight. Because of that, they don't have evidence of people leaving or entering that bank. The robbers once again release another hostage who happens to be one of the bank's employees. He has a briefcase hanging on his body which contains the demands of the robbers. At first, he doesn't want to answer the investigators' questions for he thinks he was disrespected because of his religion, but eventually cooperates after the detectives convince him. Mr. Case personally goes to the investigators and asks for an update regarding the situation. They inform the bank owner that the robbers demand for 2 buses and 1 jumbo jet with a full gas tank and pilot, and they only give the police until 9 p.m. or else they will take 1 hostage every hour in front of the media. Mr. Case offers his help, but the investigators refuse and politely ask him to get out of the bus. The robbers demand for the hostages. The police put listening devices on the food to hear the situation inside. One of the hostages bravely takes off his mask, but the other hostages remind him to relax, or the robbers might kill them. The robbers forcefully grab the hostage who takes off his mask and knocks him off the ground. The food finally arrived. When the robbers get out to get the food, The detective tries to ask what they want, but the robbers don't say anything and just close the door. The investigators can now hear the recordings from the pizza boxes. They have a hard time understanding the language, so they ask the people who are around the area, and a worker says that they are speaking Albanian. The investigators hurriedly call the Albanian consulate and ask if they can get somebody to translate the recordings for them. One of the robbers gives food to the young boy who is alone inside a room and plays his PSP. He is concerned about the young boy's well-being because he is playing a violent game. The boy thinks that robbing the bank is cool. He asks the boy to finish his food and they will go to his father to stop him from playing the game. The investigators fail to get an Albanian translator, so they ask the help of the worker who informs them about the language. The worker says that he cannot speak Albanian and just heard it to his ex-wife who happens to be from Albania. Detective Keith asks him to call his ex-wife. The worker doesn't want to communicate with his ex-wife, but he doesn't have any choice. Inside the bank, the leader of the robbers takes off his mask. His name is Dalton Russell. The ex-wife of the worker finally arrives and asks Detective Keith to fix her parking ticket violation in return for helping them translate the recordings. The woman burst into laughter while listening to the audio. She says that it is the propaganda recordings of the deceased president of Albania. The investigators finally realize that the robbers already anticipated the situation. The robbers open a safety box. They don't get anything but just an envelope that contains documents. Madeline bribes Detective Keith to allow her to get involved in the situation and gets inside the bank to get important documents, but the detective refuses the offer. Dalton, the leader of the robber, communicates to Detective Keith and asks for the update of his demands. The detective tries to calm the leader and promises that he will do his best to abide by his demands. The robbers demand for another set of food. They are also able to dig a deep hole inside the bank. In the evening, Madeline finally convinces Detective Keith. He calls Dalton and hands over the phone to Madeline. She convinces Dalton to let her go inside the bank. She offers $2 million to Dalton if he will give the documents of Mr. Case. He refuses and tells a story about an American who used to work in a bank in Switzerland during the World War LL, and that man used his position with the Nazis to himself rich while the people around him were being stripped of everything they owned and used his blood money to start a bank. Dalton refers to Mr. Case, the owner of the Manhattan Trust Bank. Madeline gets out of the bank and Detective Keith interrogates her but fails to get any valid information. She just informs that the robbers are not murderers, but Detective Keith doesn't believe. Detective Keith calls Dalton and informs him that the plane is ready, but he wants to get inside to check on the hostages. He agrees. The robbers thoroughly check Detective Keith before they allow him to enter. He asks Dalton to release the young boy, but he refuses and escorts him outside the bank. But instead of going out peacefully, Detective Keith tries to take off Dalton's mask that annoys him a lot. He calls Detective Keith and commands him to direct the CCTV cameras on the second floor of the building. The investigators are all surprised to see that the robbers kill one of the hostages. Out of anger, Detective Keith confronts Dalton. Dalton says that he already warned him but didn't listen and adds that he will kill more people if their demand will not be granted the soonest. Detective Keith's supervisor arrives and blames him for the death of the hostage. Because of the execution of one of the hostages, an emergency services unit team plans to storm the bank. Detective Keith finds out that the robbers bugged them by putting a listening device to the briefcase that they sent with the hostage. He hurriedly calls the head of NYPD to stop their plan of storming the bank, for he knows that the robbers heard their entire conversation, but the NYPD refuses to listen and will continue the plan. Dalton hears everything and orders to get everyone together. After that, they detonate smoke grenades and exit the bank with the hostages. The police shoot some of the people who come out of the bank. The head of NYPD shouts a ceasefire, for they don't know who the robbers and hostages are. The police investigate all the people who come out of the bank but are unsuccessful in distinguishing the robbers and the hostages. Later, they search the bank and find out that the guns that the robbers used are fake and just replicas. Also, they find props about the fake execution of the hostage. They are even more surprised that no money and valuables are stolen. Because they fail to identify who the hostages and the robbers are, the superiors order them to drop the case. Detective Keith still searches the bank and finds information about the deposit box number 392 and is able to get a search warrant to open it, but Madeline confronts him and orders him to drop the case. Detective Keith plays a recording that proves his innocence, which makes Madeline surprised. Madeline goes to Mr. Case to inform him that he doesn't need to worry about Detective Keith. She also informs him that leader of the robbers informed her that he got rich because of the Nazis, and he admits everything. Mr. Case bribes Madeline to keep everything as a secret. Dalton redoes his opening speech about the perfect bank robbery. He hides behind the fake walls that the robbers created inside the bank's supply room. He goes out a week after the robbery with Mr. Case's documents and diamonds. On his way out of the bank, he bumps into Detective Keith, who doesn't recognize him. He peacefully exits the bank and enters a van filled with the other robbers, who successfully escapes by mixing with the hostages. Detective Keith opens the safety box and finds Dalton's message to follow the ring. After that, he visits Mr. Case to confront him regarding the Nazis, but he denies everything. So he directly goes to Madeline to convince her to report Mr. Case to the Office of War Crimes Issues. Finally, Detective Keith goes home and cuddles with his girlfriend. After that, finds a loose diamond in his pocket and realizes that Dalton slipped it when they collided in the bank. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this and to help the channel grow.